Hello ladies and gentlemen and movie lovers of all kind, and welcome back to another Top 10 Wednesday, or Top 10's Day if you'd prefer. For today, we are not going to be doing a Top 10, but instead a ranking video. And we are going to be ranking all 21 Marvel Cinematic Universe movies from worst to best. Without further ado, let's hop right into it. Coming in at number 21 is Thor: The Dark World. Why? Because this movie is as bland as can be, whether it is the color palette, the villain, or the plotline. All of it is incredibly bland, and it even seems that Hemsworth and Portman have lost all of their chemistry. The only thing that saves this movie is the bromance section between Thor and Loki, and when, spoiler alert, Thor's mother is murdered, because at least you feel some emotion there. It definitely does deserve its spot as number 21 in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Coming at number 20 is actually going to be Thor. The movie is mostly boring. I mean, Thor spends the majority of his movie without his hammer and any of his powers and doesn't really do anything. But I do enjoy his whole storyline about proving yourself, and I also do enjoy Hiddleston again as Loki and his whole story arc about jealousy and the friction with his brother and wanting to be king. That's all great. The rest of it, however, I just find incredibly dull. The movie just goes nowhere and doesn't really do anything. Coming in at number 19 is The Incredible Hulk. The Incredible Hulk is an interesting movie to say the least. I do enjoy the fact that it looks at the other side of the monster. It's not just a full-blown Hulk movie, but it does look at Bruce Banner's side, and it focuses heavily on controlling your inner demons, as well as, even though it's just a big dumb CGI fight, the final fight is really good for getting the speakers pumping and is super entertaining to watch. But Edward Norton was sadly terribly miscast, and he has no chemistry with any of his on-screen co-stars, and aside from Norton's Banner plotline, the writing is just very subpar, and that's being nice. Coming at number 18 is Iron Man 2. Sadly, Whiplash was not a great villain, and Mickey Rourke was terribly misused, and the final fight with Tony, Rhodey, fighting against Whiplash and his army of mini Iron Men is super entertaining, albeit a little bit over the top at times. But overall, the whole movie felt like build-up towards something else, but it never really feels like it's working towards something. Coming at number 17 is Ant-Man. Ant-Man is one of the funniest MCU movies, and all of its leads are great. Whether it's Rudd, Lily, or Douglas, or even Michael Pena, they're all great, and their conflicting interests and overlapping storylines are what really make this movie. But aside from that, it really does just feel like a complete rehash of Iron Man 1, so not only have you seen it before, but you've seen it literally in the same universe just a few years back. Coming in at number 16, and it breaks my heart to say this, is Captain Marvel. I am so glad that it is the first female-led MCU movie. The action is fast and visually pleasing. Larson and Jackson have wonderful chemistry. Goose the Cat absolutely steals the show, and the Skrulls are really cool creative villains. But the main villains themselves are really lacking, like they are in plenty of MCU movies, as well as the few twists that are in this movie feel super unearned. Coming in at number 15 is Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now, the only reason it's higher than the other few that are below it is because it's a lot funnier than the original Ant-Man and any of the other movies that are there. It has mostly the same charm that the original is, so additions, the Wasp was great. But that's pretty much it for the additions. Ghost feels completely wasted, as she could have been a really cool villain, and Walton Goggins also incredibly wasted, and his whole villain's side storyline felt completely useless, and it seemed like it was just there for filler. Coming in at number 14 is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. This one does have another killer soundtrack, just like its first one, and it is probably the most visually appeasing of the MCU movies. I also liked how it added to its characters by giving them all much more personal storylines. I thought that was all very nice, and it helped develop and flesh out the characters a whole lot more, but my biggest issue with this movie is that once they get to Ego the planet, the movie just feels like it stops. It gets stuck in this area and then doesn't really do anything. All the characters just kind of sit there for the next hour until we get to the end sequence. Luckily, it is saved by, spoiler alert, Yondu's sacrifice at the end of the movie. Brought a tear to my eye. Wow, Michael Rooker, who knew you had it in you? I mean, not really Michael Rooker. It's Mary Poppins, y'all. Coming in at number 13 is Spider-Man Homecoming. Tom Holland and Michael Keaton don't just steal the show, they completely own the show. Tom Holland is my favorite Spider-Man, and who knew Vulture could be so cool? Only Michael Keaton could do that. As for the Spidey action, great as always. The MCU knows how to shoot action, and they know how to do Spider-Man well, obviously. But after that, I just feel other villains like the Shocker get completely wasted, and to see him done dirty like that absolutely tore me up inside. This movie came out at a bad time. It came out where we just had Sam Raimi's trilogy end, and then we were shoved in front of The Amazing Spider-Man, and then that just abruptly ended, and then we got this. So I feel like the storyline and a lot of the goings-on in the movie felt like retreads from previous Spider-Man flicks, and that held it back quite a bit for me. But I also do really enjoy the story arc of Peter having to prove himself, and not just to the Avengers, but to himself. Coming in at number 12 is Doctor Strange. This movie is visually mesmerizing and totally insane. And although it is just another superhero movie for the most part, it does manage to feel different when we get into all the magical stuff. But sadly, Mads Mikkelsen is completely underutilized as the villain. This guy is a great actor. This guy is a great villain. He's a super menacing presence, and then they just do nothing with him. He's just there to oppose Doctor Strange. In regards to Doctor Strange, I think Benedict Cumberbatch is absolutely stellar as Doctor Strange, but it just feels like the story doesn't have the high stakes like it wants you to believe it has, and the writing just seems like generic superhero stuff. Coming at number 11 is going to be Black Panther. I know, right? Not even in the top 10 for me, but this movie's aesthetic is one of a kind. Whether it is the costume design, the set design, Wakanda as a whole, aesthetically, Black Panther is unmatched. The leads are all top-notch as well. It can literally be any single one of them, take your pick, and they gave it their all and gave an incredible performance, but especially Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger, one of the best villains in the MCU by far. The action is also another major highlight, but where it goes wrong for me is the fact that they did nothing with Andy Serkis, and I love Andy Serkis, and the whole final fight really just falls flat due to wonky CGI. Coming at number 10 is going to be Captain America: The First Avenger. This is by far the most underrated MCU movie. Now, for me personally, I'm a total sucker for World War II movies, so the setting alone had me sold on this movie. But you throw in Chris Evans, and I'm singing a whole different tune. I also love Hugo Weaving as Red Skull. His over-the-top nature and his menacing and authoritative presence really sell him for this role. As well as the story is full of heart and great messages about being the little guy and doing what's right, even if it means doing a lot of wrong to get there. Coming in at number 9, and boy am I about to get a lot of heat for this one, and that is Iron Man 3. Now, I understand a lot of people do not like the Mandarin twist. The Mandarin twist I thought was great. The whole puppet master idea and how Killian was behind it the whole time, I thought that was awesome. And I also love the extremist villain thing overall. Just being able to have heaty, melty hands and fire breath, that's freaking cool. Not to mention the epic final battle with the Iron Legion and all the extremist soldiers. And I adore how they handled Tony's PTSD in this. I feel like it made the movie something else. It added that extra layer of depth that no other MCU movie really has. Now, although it's definitely not the most well-made Iron Man movie, I for sure think that it's the most entertaining. Coming in at number 8, and boy am I about to get some more flack, and that is Avengers: Age of Ultron. Okay, James Spader absolutely killed it as Ultron. He was a great villain. He had a purpose. He was going to fulfill that purpose. He basically dismantled the Avengers. He almost destroyed the entire world. He created his whole army by himself. I also adored the storyline that Tony created Ultron. Ironically, when trying to save the world, he creates a robot that is going to save it by ending it. So that also creates that awesome conflict between the team. And not to mention the introduction of the twins being Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, as well as, spoiler, Vision. And the final battle on Sokovia is one of the best final battles in the MCU movie and almost rivals the Battle of New York from the original Avengers. Oh yeah, and Hulk versus Hulkbuster, exactly what we wanted. Coming in at number 7 is the original Iron Man. Okay, as soon as we saw Robert Downey Jr. playing Tony Stark, we knew that he was born for this role. This movie started it all off, and it wasn't just this big bombastic superhero flick, it was a very grounded character study. A character study on Tony Stark and his coming to the realization of what his life's work has done, how his company has affected the world, not just in the money going up in his bank account, but what it has done to plenty of other nations. Jeff Bridges plays a great villain as Obadiah Stane, or the the Ironmonger, and then the final fight between Iron Man and the Ironmonger was something that was unheard of in superhero flicks. I mean, up until that point, 2008, did we really have a final fight that was that epic? I definitely don't think so. Coming in at number 6 is going to be Thor Ragnarok. This movie is a totally hilarious, balls to the wall acid trip that will have you laughing your ass off from beginning to end. Taika Waititi definitely put his stamp on the MCU with this one. Whether it's the final action sequence, the Hulk versus Thor action sequence, Jeff Goldblum being Jeff Goldblum, the addition of Valkyrie, almost every single thing works in this movie. The only things that I would ding it for is the sad misuse of Carl Urban, whom I love, as well. I felt like Anthony Hopkins' spoiler exit from playing Odin was just so unsatisfying. Coming at number 5 is Guardians of the Galaxy. Now this movie probably has the best soundtrack in any movie ever. It brings together a team of superheroes that most general audiences never even heard of, and you get to enjoy their banter and their bond all the same as the movie goes on, and it is some of the best chemistry between any of the MCU casts. You get to experience the cosmos for pretty much the first time, and boy are they filled with a lot of life. The visuals are stunning, the jokes are quick-witted, the final battle on Xandar is a sight to behold, and whether you pick any of the little moments in the ending, whether it is spoiler, Groot's sacrifice, the dance-off, or the you said it yourself bitch, we're the Guardians of the Galaxies, pick any single one of those moments and this movie ends almost perfectly. The only negative I really have with it is that I just don't really care for Ronan as the bad guy. Coming in at number 4 is going to be Captain America: The Winter Soldier. This movie is almost more spy thriller than it is superhero movie, and that works majorly to its advantage. Winter Soldier is a total badass, and the big reveal of his true identity literally had my jaw on the floor. Some of the best and most grounded action in the MCU to date, some of its best, dare I say it, the best writing in the MCU. Any portion of this movie, it's damn near perfect, and by far more than deserving of the number 4 spot. Coming in at number 3 is The Avengers. Take a look at that one shot, that spinning shot, that moment when you finally realize that we are here, years and years of build-up, and we have finally reached the Avengers. That's really all I need to say, but I will go on, because this movie is now definitely corny when you look back on it compared to the other MCU movies, but the cast has undeniable chemistry. They're witty, they're smart, they're funny, they're butting heads. The movie is definitely more lighthearted in tone, but the final battle in New York may be my favorite battle in the MCU. And then to wrap it all up, you have Loki once again being possibly the best villain in the MCU, the reveal of Thanos in the end credits scene, and Tony's willingness to make that ultimate sacrifice. Coming in at number 2 and the runner-up for my ranking is Avengers: Infinity War. Years and years of gathering and building, and we've finally reached this point where all of our favorite heroes are together. Visually, this movie should have been Oscar-winning. Now take your pick for any of the action sequences, whether it's the battle on Titan, the battle for Wakanda, or even the more smaller scale stuff like the battle in New York. Seeing all these characters together and getting all these interactions that we always wanted to see. Thanos is definitely my favorite villain in the MCU now, and it has probably the biggest shock ending in film history. Coming in at the number 1 spot and my favorite MCU movie is going to be Captain America: Civil War. I feel like this is the most personal story there is. By far my favorite part is that you get the bystander's perspective from this one. You get to see all the destruction from security cameras, cell phone cameras, all of the times that we are cheering for the Avengers when they save the day. We're really seeing the aftermath of all this, and I feel like it's the most realistic of any of the MCU movies, maybe aside from The Winter Soldier. And then you get into the real personal stuff where the Avengers are completely torn apart and pitted against one another in probably my second favorite action sequence in the MCU, the airport sequence. But then you also get the final fight, which is not a spoiler because you see it in the trailer, between Tony versus Cap and Bucky. I was almost bawling like a baby that entire time. It's so grounded in reality, yet still filled to the brim with all of your favorite superhero stuff. It manages to juggle all of this stuff, all of these characters perfectly, while also introducing Spider-Man and Black Panther, and I feel Zemo is a much better villain than so many people give him credit for. So overall, I feel like this movie brings together everything that you want from a superhero movie and everything that you would feel if these superheroes were real, and puts it all into one beautiful masterpiece called Captain America: Civil War. So that's it for today, guys. Be sure to check me out on social media. Links will be in the description, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and that's a wrap. And today it is going to be Wonder Woman versus Captain Marvel. We are pitting